All right, welcome everybody. We are going to be talking about, as Hans tells us, the most exciting topic ever, privacy policies. But this is a very, very important topic, especially if you are building websites for clients. So to help us better understand privacy policies, so it's something that is not just so darn scary that we just push off and don't talk about, I have brought in two wonderful, fun people to help us with this. And we have Hans here. He is a former 12-person agency owner, so he completely understands what you are going through. He understands the agency side of things. And then we have Donata, who is our attorney, and she is the one who really understands the whole privacy policies and how we can make this work with so many different states and so many different laws going on to really protect the websites. So she's really a big deal. So she is definitely someone who you want to listen to when it comes to privacy policies, as she has helped other attorneys be able to understand this, and has been the vice president of the e-privacy committee for the American Bar Association. So definitely a big deal. So thank you both so much for joining us, and I will let you take it away.
Awesome. So, it's funny, you call us a big deal, and I'm not kidding you. 5 minutes ago, we were finishing up our worm composting bin. We were digging in about 250 worms that we added to our composting bin. So I don't consider us a big deal by any stretch of the word, but Donata, I guess, kind of is with all the things you've achieved in your life. But.
So we have a little presentation for you guys just to kind of give an overview of what's going on in privacy and the things that you need to know. But we'll try not to harp on too long with the presentation and, go into Q&A to see if you guys have any questions that we can help answer and things that we can help clarify. So we're going to share our screen now.
Yes.
And pull up the presentation.
Yes.
So just...
All right. So hopefully everyone can hear us still. Please chime in.
If you can.
Yeah, if you can't. So.
Or if you can't see the screen. So today we're going to talk about the 3 things all web professionals need to know about privacy. We're going to be busting some myths about what websites need to have a privacy policy and what websites don't. Kind of explaining a little bit about the legislation that's going on, and then talking about why you should be the ones to talk to your clients about privacy. So before we get started, even though I am an attorney, everything that we say today is not legal advice, and we're not providing legal services through this presentation or through any of the Q&A. If you do need legal advice, we would definitely recommend contacting an attorney in your area to discuss your specific legal needs. So we're just presenting this for informational purposes only, and it is not legal advice. So real quick, the topics that we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk about which websites need to have a privacy policy, why privacy policies are important, and why you should be the one to talk to your clients about privacy as somebody who's a web professional. So before we get into the substantive portion of today's presentation, we wanted to introduce ourselves. So my name is Donata. I'm a privacy and technology attorney, and I'm a certified information privacy professional. I've been working in the privacy space for about 5 years. I'm the president of Termageddon, which is a SaaS company that generates privacy policies and terms of service. And I'm actually the legal engineer behind the policy questionnaires and text. So when you go in and answer all the questions to generate your policies, I'm the one who created those and created the text and the thousands and millions of different combinations that you can get. And I'm also responsible for keeping those policies up to date with changing laws. So a huge portion of my day is being spent, keeping track of privacy bills and privacy laws. And actually later in this presentation, you're going to see a shot of a privacy bill tracker. And I can already tell you it's out of date because this morning Pennsylvania proposed a new privacy bill. And we'll get into that later, but it just kind of shows you how much things change because I uploaded that chart yesterday. I'm also the vice chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee. and the chair of the Chicago chapter of the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And perhaps most importantly, because we're sitting so close and people might have questions about that, I'm Hans's wife.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Hans. I'm the other co-founder. I'm the vice president of Termageddon. I oversee partnerships. Our core model is web agency partnerships, which I'm sure we'll talk about later today. Just to give you a sneak peek, it's a free program where you get a free license forever. And we do that in the hopes that you're willing to consider reselling or using our affiliate program for your clients so you can make a new recurring revenue stream while helping your clients get protected. But prior to Termageddon, I ran an agency in downtown Chicago. I sold that agency 2 years and 7 days ago on the dot to focus all of my time on Termageddon. We've grown to about 4,000 web agency partners that span the US, Canada, and the UK and Ireland. And we're really excited about where we're going as a company. We now have, tens of thousands of clients, and it's really exciting. Okay.
All right. So let's start off with a question that pretty much everyone has. It's what websites need to have a privacy policy? And there's a lot of misconceptions here. So some people think that only e-commerce websites need to have one. Only websites that sell information need to have one. Only websites that share information need to have one. And those are just really not true. So we're going to talk about which websites need to have a privacy policy so that you can easily recognize if the website that you're building or your own website is building needs to have one. A little bit of background here, because I do think that this is important. So if you talk to me 10 years ago, or if you were designing websites 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, you probably at that time, privacy really wasn't that big of a deal unless you were in healthcare or finance. So nobody really paid attention to privacy back then. You would take and copy a competitor's privacy policy, put that on a website, maybe change the company name if you're really have good attention to detail, or put some free template online on a website and, never looked at it again. And that was fine. So if you've been in the web design business for a while, you might be thinking, all right, well, why is this a big deal now? I've been working for 10, 15 years. It was never a big deal. What changed? And I think it's important to talk about that because it kind of gives more context as to why this is important. So 2018 was really the year when a lot of things changed, and two things happened that were really important in privacy. So first, the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, went into effect, providing new privacy rights to residents of the EU. That was a huge deal. It was all over the news. People were freaking out about it. And people in the US saw that and kind of said, all right, well, all these Europeans are getting all these rights. Why can't we? So that was kind of the first introduction to privacy for a lot of people. And two, the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke in 2018. And a lot of you have most likely heard of this being in tech, but if you haven't, basically Cambridge Analytica scraped the profiles of millions of Facebook users and then used that personal information for political advertising and targeting those political ads. And once that scandal broke, it kind of really pulled back the veil from consumers' eyes and showed them what can happen when they share their personal information online, when they provide it to certain companies, that it can be abused, it can be stolen, it can be breached. And people were getting really, really concerned about this. And they were also very concerned about the fact that they really couldn't do anything about it, right? They didn't have the right to ask Facebook to delete their information or Cambridge Analytica to delete their information. They couldn't even necessarily tell what information Facebook had about them. So they had no privacy rights. And that kind of came into light of, privacy rights are really important and they're actually helpful. So consumers went from a very nonchalant attitude of, I'll just give you my personal information in exchange for this product or service, who cares, to, oh, wow, things can really happen and can really go downhill. And consumers started pressuring their state legislators to propose and pass privacy laws. And that's why we have so many of these today. And, that's kind of the background of what happened. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward into talking about what websites need to have a privacy policy. So we only have one definition here today, and we're not going to quiz you afterwards, so don't worry. but it is personally identifiable information, also called PII. So PII is any data that could identify an individual. Great examples of PII include name, email, phone number, physical address. IP address is an example of PII. And any website that has a contact form collects personally identifiable information, or PII. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, here's an example of our contact form. I'm sure you've built many of these, but as you can see, that form collects names and emails, which means that this contact form collects PII. So if you're trying to figure out whether a website that you're building collects PII, you should go through each page and look for forms. So look for like email newsletter sign up forms, contact forms, account creation forms, purchasing forms, even comments, making comments on a blog. A lot of times those comment forms will collect names. Sometimes they'll collect emails. So all of that is stuff that you should look out for, all of those forms. And then also you should look out for analytics, because analytics collects IP address, which is considered PII by most privacy laws. So if you're installing Google Analytics or anything similar, that's something to keep in mind as well. And I think this is probably the most important part of this presentation. So if you really, remember one thing, I hope that you remember this. Any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. So when you're building those websites, when you're building those forms, that's when the light bulb should go off. When you're installing analytics, that's when the light bulb should go off. Okay, this website collects PII. That means this website needs a privacy policy. And notice that I didn't say use, I didn't say share, I didn't say sell. It's the collection that matters. So it doesn't matter whether your clients are actually even using this information, if they're sharing it with anyone else, or they're selling it to anyone. The moment that they collect it, that's when they need to have a privacy policy. So that was part one, right? That was pretty easy. So for part one, we kind of saw what websites need to have a privacy policy. For part two, we're going to talk about why does PII collection and privacy matter. Hans can probably attest to this. I'm much more likely to do something if I understand why I need to do it. So I think the why is pretty important here. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So maybe Hans can take us through this part.
Sure. Yeah, happily. So why does PII collection matter? PII is now regulated by governing bodies from different states, countries, or continents. So what I mean by that is when a website is asking for someone to submit their name or email, government bodies are out to protect that personal information of residents of their state or country or continent. And so when collecting that information, you may need to comply with those regulations and provide specific disclosures within your privacy policy. So, what we often see with these regulations from a high level is these privacy laws are out to make website owners disclose what PII you collect. So if you have a contact form, maybe you ask for name, email, phone number. If you have Google Analytics installed, you probably collect IP address and share that data. The other two main purposes of privacy laws are to say for you to disclose what you do with that PII. Perhaps you add it to or store a backup in your WordPress backend or share it with your customer management system or whatever that may be. And who the PII is shared with, that's where we talk about potentially sharing data with WordPress, for example. When a form gets submitted, very often that form gets stored in the backend of the WordPress website. Therefore, you're sharing data with content management systems. Or when you collect IP address for Google Analytics purposes, you're sharing IP address with Google, with data analytics providers. So it's all what those privacy laws are all about are having you explain through a privacy policy how you collect PII, what you do with it, and who you share it with. Now, with that all being said, that is such a high level of what privacy laws ask for you to disclose. It really almost becomes, there's much more value in understanding the nuances to privacy laws as well, because almost every privacy law is unique and have specific disclosures that are required to be made in the privacy policy.
Yeah, and kind of to give a little bit of insight as to how privacy policies are written, or how they should be written if they're written correctly. The first step is to figure out what privacy laws apply to you. And then based on each privacy law that applies to you, each privacy law has different disclosures that it requires, and those disclosures go into the privacy policy. So if you have a privacy policy right now, and the first step was not to figure out what privacy laws apply to you, it's more likely than not that that privacy policy is not compliant, because the privacy policy is based directly on what privacy laws apply to you. And that's kind of the next thing here. So there are multiple privacy laws that are out right now that apply to the collection of PII by websites. And I won't go through each of these individually because I don't want anybody to fall asleep. But as Hans said, what's really important to remember is that privacy laws protect consumers and not businesses, right? So consumers can go to any website and submit their PII, which means that some of these privacy laws apply even if you're not located in these states or countries. A great example is the California Online Privacy Protection Act of 2003, CalOPA. That law applies to any website that collects the PII of California residents. Now, being a web designer, you know that anybody from anywhere can submit their information on a contact form. So that means that this law will apply to pretty much any modern website out there, right? So when it comes to figuring out what privacy laws apply to you, you really need to ask whose PII you're collecting, where you do business, who are you tracking online through analytics, for example, and to who you're offering goods or services. Those are really the key things that you need to know. And it doesn't necessarily matter where the business itself is located. So another example, Nevada's privacy law, that applies to any website that collects the PII of Nevada residents and to businesses that do business with Nevada residents. So if you have a customer that's in Nevada, that's a law that you need to comply with. And I also wanted to mention that a couple weeks ago, Virginia passed its privacy law. So Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act was just passed. That one goes into effect in 2023. So there's some time to prepare for that. But just like every other privacy law, it can apply outside of Virginia. And then it also it requires websites to have a privacy policy that makes very specific disclosures. And, when it comes to compliance with privacy laws, the easiest way to start that journey is to have a privacy policy, because that's the easiest way to tell if you're not compliant, right? So if a consumer goes onto your website and sees that, you're collecting their PII and you don't have a privacy policy, that's, the best way to get a complaint filed against you. So it's important to remember that.
You take this one.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to do the next one.
All right. Sounds good. So in terms of what can happen if you're not compliant with privacy laws, so, you're collecting PII, you're doing business in certain states, but you don't have a privacy policy, or you refuse to honor somebody's privacy rights. Penalties for not complying with privacy laws range from $2,500 per violation to 20 million euros or more in total. In this case, per violation actually means per website visitor whose privacy rights were infringed upon. So let's say you have 100 website visitors from California this month. That fine is calculated as 2,500 times 100. So you can see how quickly that can add up. Now, in terms of the difference between the US and EU, in the European Union, they kind of have more of a sliding scale. They take different factors into account. Is this your first violation? How egregious was the violation? What exactly did you do? How big is your company? In the US, none of that really matters. It's very strict, $2,500 per violation. And they don't really care, whether this is your first violation or your 50th one, or whether you're a small business or a big business. It's very strict fine regime.
Now,
this chart is getting more and more compressed over time.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Donato changes this on a daily basis at this point because, I think yesterday was North Carolina, right? It's just constantly changing. And
I hate spreadsheets. So.
Well, I like spreadsheets. So I like talking about this page. we've discussed the privacy laws that already exist that protect the personal information of consumers of different states, countries, or continents. And for part two, the part two that we're in right now, if I can give you any message for you to take away from this part, it's that privacy laws don't care about where your website or where your business is located. They could care less. They are out to protect their citizens. So if your website is reaching people from certain states or countries or continents, you may need to comply with their privacy laws, even though you're not located in there. And that broad reaching nature of privacy laws exists, that nature exists with every single privacy laws that's being introduced. And therein lies the challenge. And to speak to how much more challenging it's about to become, I would say to look at this privacy bill tracker, which is also on our blog, and I can send a link if anyone wants one. These are all the proposed state-specific privacy bills that are being proposed actively right now in America. And as you can see, each column lists out different things regarding these privacy laws. But the fourth column, you'll see which of these privacy bills will require changes to the privacy policy. And as you'll see, almost every single one does. Now, when you go one column over, you'll see how many of these privacy bills have a business size limit, meaning like, does your business have to reach these certain thresholds, like, a certain amount of money in revenue every year, or maybe you process the data of so many citizens per year, whatever it may be. You'll see that there's many of these privacy bills that say, hey, you have to be of a certain size, but then there's many privacy bills that don't care. So for example, New York, the second option or second one of New York, the consumer rights bill name, that one has no business size limit, will require privacy policy changes. And if you don't comply with those new disclosure requirements, you'll see in the next column over that consumers can sue businesses.
Sorry, that's the Right to Know Act of 2021.
Oh,
consumer rights.
Okay. Thank you. So therein lies the frustration I think so many small business owners are about to have, which is the fact that, hey, the right to privacy is something I think is, nonpartisan. I think every American can get behind the idea of the right to privacy. The fact, though, that individual states are implementing their own privacy bills that will require businesses located anywhere to possibly have to comply and possibly provide updates to their privacy policy is kind of crazy. But that's where we're at. And that's really what I wanted to target on this page.
Yeah, and maybe I could take a second to explain why we're at where we're at. So, in the European Union, all of the countries came together and passed GDPR. It's one set of rules that applies to anyone that's, located over there. And there are some very minor deviations from country to country, but pretty much it's just one set of rules. In the United States, we don't have a federal privacy law that governs PII collected by websites. And, for better or worse, the federal government, has other priorities right now. And it seems like there's very little to no movement on a federal level. So states have essentially said, all right, we're not waiting on the feds to pass this. We're going to do this ourselves, which is essentially going to lead to businesses that have a website or that do business online, needing to potentially comply with, dozens of privacy bills in the future. And like Hans said, the point of these bills is to provide privacy rights to consumers. So the right to access data, delete it, correct it, opt out of certain uses of it, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that it's not just a privacy policy that you're going to need. You're also going to need ways to comply with these consumer requests too. And, for some of you that don't necessarily care so much about the fines or are willing to roll the dice, I did want to mention that there are a couple of other reasons for caring about privacy and having a privacy policy or having a website that complies with privacy laws. So first, a study by KPMG found that 84% of consumers said that they're open to new state privacy laws. So the state privacy law thing is not going away anytime soon, because legislators don't pass laws about things that their constituents don't care about. So the more constituents care about a particular topic, the more likely it is that laws are going to be passed around that topic. because legislators don't necessarily have time to be writing bills about things that no one cares about. They want to, appeal to their base. So you don't just need to have a privacy policy that complies with today's privacy laws. You also need to have a strategy for keeping that privacy policy up to date with future privacy laws, because so many consumers care about it. A study by Axios found that 93% of Americans would switch to a company that prioritizes data privacy. So, caring about privacy and showing to your customers that you care about privacy, or your prospective customers that you care about privacy, can give you a competitive edge. And then a study by Cisco found that privacy concerns can slow down the sales cycle by an average of 7.8 weeks. So that's something to keep in mind as well, especially for smaller businesses. A slowdown in the sales cycle because of privacy is something that can absolutely be avoided and should be avoided. And then lastly, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a consumer, which we all are consumers, even though we might be here for business purposes, privacy is or should be a fundamental human right, and we shouldn't abuse it. Because as consumers ourselves, we don't like it when our privacy is getting abused, when we're getting marketing text messages that we never signed up for, or we're getting a bunch of ads that are super creepy, and all of that. So I think, as people in the web industry, we need to show the right way, and the right thing to do would be to respect privacy.
So this brings us to our final section for today's conversation, and it's why should you be the one to talk to your clients about privacy? As I mentioned before, I ran a 12-person web agency for 7 years. I'll be honest, I used to copy and paste privacy policies, templates for my clients until I started dating and ultimately married a privacy attorney, and my opinion changed quite a bit.
That's the solution to all of this. Just privacy attorney.
I'm helping them not have to date a privacy. I'll take the hit.
It's been so horrible.
Yeah, I'll take the hit. I'll marry this woman, figure it all out. So I'm happily married, for the record.
That.
So, okay. So why should you be the one to talk about privacy with your clients? So speaking from experience in launching Termageddon and offering it to my own clients, I will tell you the first thing it's going to make you do is look proactive and professional rather than reactive and unprepared. What would happen in a situation where you are competing against another client or another web agency for a new website project? And this kind of seeps down to the bottom benefit, helps you stand above your competition. It's kind of both here. But when you are quoting out a new website project and you're discussing the reasons why they would need a privacy policy, and then the other web agency is quoting out a project and not even discussing or having any sort of clue about what privacy policies are, all else equal, who would win that bid? Well, I'll just about guarantee it's the business, or it's the agency owner who has a more broad understanding of all the things that make up a website and make a website as professional and well built as possible. So talking about privacy policies is a wonderful way to stand above your competition. And the reason why I say it helps you makes you look proactive and professional is not only winning new deals, but also I can't tell you how many times a client would come to me and ask me a particular question about the ins or outs of how a website works. And I would provide my insights and everything like that. And those little insights are what build trust. And, when you're providing those insights ahead of time, before it actually becomes a problem, you are sending off a message to your clients that you have their best intentions in mind. And that brings me into the fact that you can improve client retention and loyalty by talking about privacy with clients, because although it certainly isn't, it's just one little part that makes up a relationship with a client, having this type of knowledge can go so far in terms of demonstrating the fact that you took the time to listen to an hour-long video conference about people talking about privacy policies so that you can help your clients better. So having this conversation with your clients improves retention and loyalty by further demonstrating that you're an industry expert and you are monitoring trends and what is changing within your industry. Last but not least, documenting and protecting your agency is a wonderful reason to discuss privacy with your clients, because since you are the one designing and implementing the functionality that helps these companies comply with, or that forces these companies into having to comply with multiple privacy laws, by you discussing that with them ahead of time, you document it, protecting your own agency so that, If they decide they don't want a privacy policy, you have something to fall back on, saying, look, I told you about this. Sorry you got fined or sued. That's not my problem. I told you that because you're collecting personal information, you may need a privacy policy. So, I really try to push the message that a web agency owner never needs to think that they need to be a privacy attorney to discuss the importance of privacy policies. No way. Where I think you are responsible for, though, is when you are building out the tools that help companies collect personal information. That is the moment you should be like, hey, just so you know, you're collecting personal information like name and email. You may want to speak to your attorney about getting a privacy policy or look at a generator for a solution as well. So when should you talk about privacy with your clients? Well, there's a handful of options. When quoting out new website projects, I mentioned earlier, all else equal, when a web agency is quoting out a project and the other web agency is quoting out the same project, but also discussing the importance of privacy policies and privacy law compliance, who's going to look better? Obviously, the agency who's more well-rounded within their industry. I'd also recommend this is a great opportunity to discuss it before launch. So you built out the website, you added some contact forms, you installed Google Analytics. Right before you launch that site, be like, hey, just so you know, you're collecting personal information with this new website. You should look into getting a privacy policy. And then there's also the fact that you probably have maintenance clients already, websites that you've serviced in the past or are actively servicing and updating over time. There is no shame in reaching out to past clients and be like, hey, just a heads up, privacy laws, I'm kind of seeing that they're becoming a bigger and bigger deal. I think you should look into possibly finding a solution to complying with these privacy laws, because fines are getting hefty and people will soon be able to sue businesses for non-compliance. So I guess with all of that said, there is never not a bad time to talk about privacy with your clients. Like, now is the time. This is the time to be proactive and demonstrate to your to your clients and your prospects that you're on top of the ever-changing landscape of your industry, and you are keeping up to date with these trends and able to pass that information to your clients so they can be knowledgeable and help protect their own businesses. So we've talked about the fact that, privacy policies are great. Okay, awesome. Well, how do you go get one? So there are two recommendations that we have, either attorneys or generators. And as you'll see, I did not write in here templates. That is because I have yet to see a single template that's compliant with every single privacy law. And on top of that, a template doesn't solve the problem of the ever-changing landscape of privacy. And that, Donata mentioned just today, another privacy bill got proposed. If that gets passed, it will require privacy policy updates. So a template, in my opinion, is not a solution to this problem, because a template can't update when new disclosures become required. So the two options we think are the best are attorneys and generators. And when I say attorneys, what I really mean is a privacy attorney, an attorney that focuses on privacy laws in the ever-changing landscape. This is an excellent option for businesses, especially if you have a budget in place to not only get a privacy policy drafted, but also to pay your attorney to constantly monitor, update your policy whenever new laws go into effect or existing privacy laws get amended. Now, obviously, I don't think most clients, at least certainly my clients, didn't have, $20K a year sitting around to keep their privacy policy up to date. And that's when I recommend, a generator is a really great alternative. So website policy generators like Termageddon, so obviously I'm a little bit biased, but generators are a fast and cost-effective means to get a set of policies added to a website. And they can work with a vast amount of clients, virtually all, well, not virtually all, but most of them, I would say 98%, unless you're building like HIPAA websites. And that's a whole different discussion. If you're building HIPAA websites, I hope you're charging a lot of money, because there's a lot that goes into HIPAA. But anyways, I digress. Generators are a wonderful way to not only generate a privacy policy, but also a good generator will monitor privacy laws, notify you when laws change, and can even push updates to the privacy policy pages with new disclosure requirements. Because generators are a technology, not a law firm, they're able to leverage software to help keep those prices extremely low so that comprehensive policies become accessible to small business owners, nonprofits, and the likes. So yeah, obviously I'm a little bit biased because we run Termageddon and generators are great, in my opinion, but I will note attorneys are also awesome too. I hope I covered this page. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah. So, if you want to go the attorney route, what I would recommend is going to IAPP.org, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. You can find a list of attorneys and law firms there that provide that service. And then when you're using an attorney, what I would ask first is, what is your strategy for keeping this policy up to date? If they ask you, what do you mean up to date? Or if they say, we don't keep this up to date, they're not the right attorney for you. And then I would also ask, what's the upfront cost of creating this policy? And then also, what is the cost of keeping it up to date, so that you know and can fully budget for exactly what you're looking for.
That's awesome. Yeah, good call.
So we have some frequently asked questions here, but I think we should probably go into, if anybody in the audience has any questions.
Yeah, and feel free to read through these if this is a question you want to ask. We get this very often when we do these presentations. Just make a mental note and write it out for us here.
Yeah, and then the next page has our contact information. So if you're like me, I go to webinar, and then 10 minutes after the webinar's over, I'm like, oh my God, I have all these questions, and then now they're gone. There's our email. So it's just donata@termageddon.com or hans@termageddon.com. And then you can also go to our website and our blog to learn more. And we have a lot of great blog posts about this stuff too.
And then sorry for the shameless plug here, but termageddon.com/agency-partners discusses our web agency partner program. So Termageddon, we're an automatically updating privacy policy generator. I'd like to think we're the most comprehensive in the world, and I can speak to that if you have any questions on that. But with our agency partner program, what we do is we give all web agencies a free set of our policies forever. No credit card required, no commitments required of any kind. We give you one for free for your own agency website in the hopes that you are willing to give us the time of day, test it out, see if you like the product. And if you do, the reason why we give it away for free is because we hope that you'll recommend us to your clients when you're building out contact forms for them, and they may need to comply with privacy laws. We even have reseller programs and referral programs where you can make recurring revenues or recurring commissions on every single client you help get set up with some policies. So, yeah.
Awesome. So should we stop screen sharing now and then go see if there's any questions from the audience?
Let's do that. So here comes my biggest fear when we stop at the screen share and then look and see if anyone's still here. So
probably not.
Yeah, we'll see. All right.
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
All right, we got you. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions here. One thing I did want to mention is that you talked about being able to go in for the agency owners, at least, and to get their free policy to add to their website. I think this is very, very important for those of you who have an agency, is to go ahead and do that, because like Hans said, you don't have to add in your credit card. You're not paying for this. This is something you can just add to your website for free. But the easiest way to be able to go offer this to clients is to be able to go to your existing clients that you already have. You already know them, they already trust you, you have that relationship established. So it's much easier to go and say, hey, this is something we really need to make sure that we're paying attention to and taking care of. As you can see, this is something that we do for our own site as well, because every website needs this. So this is how it looks. This is something that we want to do for you and tailor to your business. So that is definitely what I would recommend. But let's jump into some of the questions here. We have a question. You mentioned about the fines varying in different areas, Europe sliding scale versus the American flat rate. Is it the consumer's location that dictates this, or the company's?
So the consumer's location would dictate that. So if somebody lives in California or like is a resident of California and you violate their privacy rights, they would make a complaint to the California Attorney General's office, sometimes the Federal Trade Commission possibly. And then that state's AG would be the one that's prosecuting the case and issuing the fine. So it is based on the consumer's location, not on your business's location.
Great, thank you. Felix is asking, I would guess that every website builder should have a privacy policy. I do not see Georgia, but I put a privacy on all of my sites.
Yeah, so again, privacy laws will apply depending on whose PII you're collecting and where you do business and who you're tracking online and to who you offer goods or services. So just because your state does not have a privacy law currently does not mean that you're scot-free, because the privacy laws of other states or countries can apply to you. So, Georgia is, slightly behind in the sense that they haven't proposed a privacy bill yet. But there's been some states that I did not expect to propose privacy bills that have, like Kentucky. So, as more of these states propose these bills and pass these privacy laws, you'll see more states providing privacy rights to their consumers. But again, as a business owner, it's not just about where you're located, it's about all those other factors too.
And I'd like to note, web agencies, no matter where you're located, I would assume you would take business anywhere, like anywhere within the US at the very least, if you're a US agency, of course. So therein lies the fact that you have a website with a contact form, and you would happily accept personal information from people from any state who are inquiring to pay you a lot of money for a website. So it's great for agencies.
Yeah, I think it's great practice to put a privacy policy on all websites, even if potentially no privacy laws apply to that website, because someday there will be privacy laws that apply. And two, consumers want to see that now. So it's something that they're interested in seeing on websites. They actually check to see if privacy policies exist and all of that, and can even stop doing business with certain companies if they don't have that. Or see them in a more favorable light if they do. So I think, what Felix is doing is definitely best practice.
Absolutely. Felix had another question. What is the best way to share information to clients? I do want to point out, though, I'll let you guys answer this, but I do want to point out that on the Termageddon website, there is information as well to help with this. I know you guys have some of these sales tools from these pre-written email templates and how to add this into proposals and these sell sheets. So it really helps you take a conversation that can feel a little bit heavier, a little more complex, and break it down so it's easy, and just having these done for you templates that you can just tailor to your own tone and your own business and be able to send it over. But I'll let you guys answer.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. The one thing that I've learned, because being an agency owner myself, it stresses me out even thinking. It used to stress me out, obviously, having to think about even what to say. So we've acknowledged that, and that's why we provide pre-written documents that you can share with your clients. We have a website policies waiver where it's just a standard operating procedure. You can, right before site launch, you have your client sign the waiver saying, hey, I built contact forms for you. I installed Google Analytics. You need a privacy policy. Now you can choose if you want one or not, if you want to hire an attorney or use Termageddon or do nothing. But no matter what you want to do, you need to sign this acknowledging that I told you about this. So we have all of that pre-written material, and we even have pre-written emails that you can send to past clients, letting them know about the growing trends of privacy law and the importance of privacy law compliance.
Yeah, and I'd say too, if you don't want to use those resources, what I would tell your clients is, hey, look, we're building this form for you. It means your websites can be collecting personally identifiable information. And I think you should look into getting a privacy policy. And I would definitely recommend doing that in writing. So do it over email so that they can come back to you and be like, oh, you never said anything. Well, now you have proof. But you don't really need to know the names of every privacy law and every privacy bill or any of that. Just say, we're building a form, you're collecting PII. I think you need to look into getting a privacy policy.
And this point is very, very important, what they're saying about being able to get this in writing, have a client actually sign this. I was sharing with Donata and Hans before, and I've shared this publicly as well, that one of the things that I've done is have clients actually sign to decline website security services and website maintenance, and making sure that they really understand how important that is, because obviously sites get hacked all the time and they can make this big investment, and then they can see that go away when things go wrong if they're not maintaining their site, making sure it's secure and so forth. So actually putting something in front of them that says, I understand this, I'm going to choose to decline this anyway, or, it's really, really powerful in getting them to stop what they're doing, stop what they're thinking about, and really pay attention. So being able to use that for privacy policy, because this obviously is huge. This isn't just their investment with a website. This is their business, and they can be sued, and it can be very, very serious for these businesses. So just taking a few extra minutes to have them agree to something like this just offers a huge protection for them. So definitely a good way to be able to bring that up and get them to pay attention to this.
For sure. It's kind of like if you go to a mechanic and your tires are completely bald and you don't want new tires, before they let you leave, you have to sign a waiver saying if you kill someone with these bald tires, it's not their fault. It's kind of like that. Yeah. So if your client wants to drive around in the rain with bald tires, okay, but make sure that you're protecting yourself and showing, that you told them that this is dangerous.
That's exactly right. I feel the same way. The fact is, if I was a small business owner, but not in tech, I was in another industry, and then I paid someone a lot of money for a professional web design service, and then I got fined or sued for privacy law noncompliance because I had no idea. That I was collecting personal information on my website. It's the business's fault. Technically, it's the business's fault, but as a small business owner, I would be pretty upset with my web agency owner or with my web agency partner that I hired for professional web services. So I think I just can't express enough, rather than trying to pretend this challenge exists or doesn't exist, embrace it as an opportunity to educate your clients. And you can say, I'm not a privacy attorney, I just know this stuff is important, and leave it at that. And then show them ways they can go about getting more information and getting help with getting compliant.
Right. And just saying, the fact is that this is something you absolutely must be paying attention to, and giving them the options that you presented. You don't want to use a template for this. It's not even an option. You're either going to pay an attorney and you're going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars to do that, or you can go with a generator and it's going to auto update for you. So we just got to take care of it now, and then it's going to take care of itself for you. And that's going to save you tons of money, and then just protect your business. So it's something you don't ever have to worry about. It's kind of a no-brainer at that point.
That's
really.
awesome. No, yeah. I agree.
Kevin is saying, how often should you update your privacy policy? You may have jumped in a little bit late, but this is something that it's constantly changing. They were sharing a spreadsheet earlier on, just showing all of the proposed privacy policy changes that can be coming up, or these new privacy laws that are coming up. And so it just is something that can change on a daily basis. Donato was sharing that she just made a change yesterday, just updated her spreadsheet, and already today there needs to be a new change. So really, when we have all of these different states and we have different countries and we have all of these different laws, it's just an ever-changing document, really. So it's not really, I think a lot of us looked at this before as a document that we could just create and then just set it and forget it. It's like, I did my privacy policy, done. But yeah, that's not the case.
Yeah, so I really think there's two sets of circumstances in which you'd want to update your privacy policy. So the first set of circumstances would be your privacy practices have changed. So let's say you install a new form on the website and now you're collecting phone numbers that you never collected before, or you're sharing that information now with an email marketing provider. You want to make sure to update your privacy policy. So anytime you're making any of those kinds of changes to the website or to your privacy practices, I definitely recommend updating it. I'd also recommend just doing a once a year review at least. Just to make sure that, nothing has changed. And then two, you'd also want to update it when there's changes in the regulations or the laws. So like a new privacy law was passed, or an existing privacy law was amended, or new regulations were issued. And California is famous for this. One of California's privacy laws, which went into effect last year, it comes with a set of regulations. And regulations are basically the Department of Justice, Attorney General's office, updating their interpretation of the law and their kind of tips on how to comply with it. So in the last year, the regulations have been updated about 5 or 6 times. And every time the regulations update, that's when you usually need to update a privacy policy, because usually they interpret the privacy policy requirements. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Changing regulations, changing existing privacy laws, or new privacy laws. Great example, right? The United Kingdom left the European Union. That was a privacy policy update, because your privacy policy was supposed to say, these are the rights that apply to EU residents. Now it needs to say these rights apply to EU and UK residents. Changes like that, it happen all of the time. The amount of changes depends on the year. Last year was pretty heavy. This year, it seems like there's a lot going on as well. So there's really no like set period of time at which you need to update. It just depends on what's happening out there.
And if that doesn't sound like fun, that's why we go. Donata finds that fun.
Yeah, we found one person that finds this fun. So fun enough.
Okay, we have the next question. Does Termageddon adapt the policies to reflect the cookies/software used by the website, like analytics, heat map software?
Yeah, so I'm guessing this is probably going to go to like the cookie consent question, ultimately, which is required under GDPR and the CCPA. And so what is important to discuss here is the fact that GDPR, for example, says that to comply with GDPR, you need to disclose the companies with whom you share data with or the categories of companies with whom you share data with. GDPR also states that you need to limit the size of your privacy policy so that it's only strictly necessary information only. So because of those two factors, we decided to say we went the category route so that you don't have to share every single company name that you share data with. Rather, you can share the categories with whom you share data with. So when it comes to the cookie question, really what you can also do, which is perfectly compliant, you disclose the information you collect in the categories of data with whom you share data with. So, for example, when a form gets submitted on a website, let's say it's a WordPress website, most of the time a backup gets stored on the WordPress backend. Well, that means you're collecting that data and then sharing that data with WordPress, but you can also say you share it with content management systems. And that can cover a lot of ground so that when you have a great example, you may share IP address with data analytics providers so that you don't have to list Google Analytics, Hotjar, and all the other potential analytics programs you have installed. So one last note is that our tool, although we don't provide a cookie consent solution, we provide many links to free cookie consent solutions, and we only provide those links if you actually need to provide a cookie consent solution in the first place. So many people get confused of when or when they don't need to have a cookie consent tool. So our tool helps identify if you actually need one and then alerts you if you do and provides links to some free options on how to add them to your website.
I see that Felix just set up his account, so that's awesome,
cool.
Felix. What I would say too is we manually review each application, so just give me a couple hours to get to yours. So if you just applied or just signed up for an account with us, just give us a couple hours and you'll get an email from us.
And I do apologize for our dog in the background. It sounds like the
evil
mailman has arrived a second time. So
yeah,
that's great. I cannot hear you, just so you know.
Oops, I muted myself. Sorry. I did want to say that I noticed, before I get to that, I've been through this process of setting up the Termageddon account. And so that you guys know, this is something that it's very detailed. It's very easy to set up, but they're literally going to walk you step by step through the process. And for each website, you're just going to be able to answer a series of questions so that the policy is going to adapt for that particular website. And then you are given a simple code. You just add that to the website. And then now that you've already answered all those questions, now it's just going to auto update for you, as long as you keep that on your site, of course. So it's very easy to do, but some of these questions, you're going to see that as you go into your account. And as you go in and you set up your own free policy there, then you'll go through those series of questions for your website. And that's what you'll be doing for the other ones as well. But I was going to mention that I started to talk about some of the resources that they have on their website, just from some of the free templates for being able to sell this to your clients, being able to add this into proposals, hold these conversations. Something else that was there as well is that there is a data privacy certified agency partner. Would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, happily. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so you actually kind of found an Easter egg within our dashboard. I really appreciate you diving into that because we don't openly promote it, but what you're speaking to is our partner program where as an agency partner, one of our areas is a quiz that we, provide some education material on, and then we have you take a quiz. And if you pass that, you get a badge that you can add to your website saying that, you're a partner of ours and you're taking data seriously. So it's a pretty cool space themed badge because we're kind of space themed or whatever. But I think demonstrating to your clients that you have a wide understanding of what makes up a great website is very critical. At least that's how I found success when running my agency. And I think data privacy is just one piece of that puzzle. And yeah, having that badge just further demonstrates that you're taking all aspects of a great website into perspective when building out a website for a client.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of web agencies, it's been very easy to just stick our head in the sand, so to speak, and ignore this, but it is a very big deal. But I think it is our job to bring this up to clients, not to wait for them to do it, because they're not going to do it, because they also want to stick their head in the sand, because this is a topic that just sounds very complex. It can sound very scary to them, but they can't ignore it. It's just too big of a deal. So a lot of the resources there, I think, will really help you feel more comfortable. And I think as well, going in and setting up your account and going through those series of questions, it just gives you more information, because some of them will ask you a question, and then if you need more information, it'll just give you a little tidbit there as to what that actually means, why, what most people might select, or why people would select one answer over the other. So it just helps you learn even more, just setting up your own privacy policy, so that you'll start to feel more comfortable and actually being able to deliver this to clients. And the good news is you just need to know a little more than them about this, enough to educate them that it's important, but you don't have to understand all of the laws and everything. That's Termageddon's job to be able to do.
Yeah, and I would say, if you're ever not sure about how to answer something or have any questions, just send us an email and we'd be happy to help. We take agencies through the setup process all the time to show them how to do it the first time. And honestly, once you do it the first time, everything else is just a breeze afterwards. So it's, we'll get on a call with you, answer any questions that you have, and help you through this, because I know it's confusing.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I think we have gone through most of the questions. Is there anything else that you guys want to share? I know you've shared a lot. At this point.
I think our messaging is pretty spot on today. We really want people to understand, when you're building websites with content forms, you're helping companies collect personal information, rather than pretending that privacy policies aren't a big deal. Don't make that decision on behalf of your client. Let them know it's a big deal, and let them make the decision for themselves what they want to do. And if you're interested, Termageddon, we would be honored to have you as an agency partner. We would love to have one-on-one calls with you, help you understand the ins and outs of our program. We give you a free license, no commitments required. And we do that in the hopes you like our product enough to want to use our sales tools and consider reselling or referring our solution to your clients as a potential option.
I'd like to add a tip too.
Yeah.
When you're building your clients' websites and you're putting these policies on the website, make sure you put the privacy policy and the terms of service on separate pages.
Oh, yeah.
I see a lot of designers making the mistake of adding them all to one page. And if you put them all on one page, it's going to be very confusing to the consumer. You're actually going to be breaking multiple privacy laws, because privacy laws specifically state that a privacy policy should be on its own with no other documents in there. And it should be marked clearly as a privacy policy. So that's my design tip of the day.
That's a really good one. That's very helpful. Very important to know, especially when we're doing something and breaking a law, we don't even realize it's happening.
Well, and we kind of have a catch-all for it. Our tool it doesn't work. If you try to put multiple policies, if you try to put multiple policies on one page, it just errors out to prevent it from making that mistake. So,
well, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for taking your time to share all this with us. For those of you guys who have been watching, if you start putting this together, what you're going to be sharing with your clients and going out and having those conversations, you can always go back, earlier into this presentation and look at some of the points that they were talking about, because that just gives them, the basics of what it is that they really need to know, what you need to know to be able to offer this to them. And like I said, go on to the Termageddon site, because there's tons of resources there. But definitely look into getting them to sign to make sure that they really understand. And if they're not going to do this, you have it documented that you've at least presented this, so they can never come back to you and say, hey, you didn't tell me about this. Oh yeah, actually we did. You signed it right here.
Yeah.
So very, very important to do. Just make sure you're protected as you build these websites for clients. So,
Exactly.
Awesome.
Thank you so
for
much.
having us.
Thank you so much.
yes, both of you, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.